Hey, Damon Tay here with PT Biz, and today we're going to talk about why 10xing your business maybe is easier than 2xing it. There's a book written by Dan Sullivan, who is probably I don't know the most well-known, but definitely has worked with maybe the most number of business owners in the country or potentially world that I know of. Dan Sullivan is someone who has a company called Strategic Coach, and I know tons of people that have been involved in that organization, a lot of traditional businesses predominantly, and they've worked with literally tens of thousands of business owners. Really, really cool program. And one of the things that he recently did over the last couple of years is wrote a series of books with another author named Ben Hardy. And in one of their books called 10x is easier than 2x, there's an interesting concept, which is basically the idea of looking at your goals, looking at what you're trying to do through a different lens. And at a minimum, thinking through things in terms of a bigger scale, bigger scope. And this is something that I've really, really adapted and enjoyed over the last few years and been using with the clients that we work with to make sure that they aren't thinking too small. Because one of the biggest mistakes that we see is people get very granular. They make these very small changes, or they say, I only want to see, X, Y, and Z happen in my business. And it's a safe bet. It's a sure thing. And it's not always the right move to make. And some of it depends on what your goals are with the business. Maybe you don't really want to scale. Maybe it's just, I want a lifestyle business and I'm only going to try to maintain these profit margins or whatever it might be. But if you're trying to grow a business, if you're really trying to build something past yourself and bigger than yourself and that has true scale, you really have to think of things through a different lens. So when we do goal setting with our clients through PT Biz, one of the things that tends to happen is people usually really try and pick things that they think they're going to achieve. I don't know if this is just like a clinical thing, clinicians, or maybe we just like to achieve goals. But usually people will pick things like, let's say they're at, $100,000 in revenue, and the goal is that they want to get to $250,000 in revenue by 3 years. And now, while that might still be great progress, and that might be a very difficult thing to achieve, it's a pretty small goal overall. And one of the things that can be very beneficial is to at least do a mental exercise of, well, what would it look like if you went from 100,000, which is where you're at, and in 3 years, you were generating $1 million in your clinic in gross revenue. And I've done this with plenty of people, and it is pretty interesting to watch them get very nervous. They're like, well, that's impossible. There's no way that could happen. Well, I could actually point at a number of people that have actually done that, that have actually, accomplished what I just said. And it's just that you may not think it's possible. So it's more about breaking these self-limiting beliefs of what we think we're capable of or what's actually possible, and less about truly, backing into what would have to happen for this 10x change in a business. So as part of this exercise, what you want to think is, okay, well, let's just agree that this is possible. This is something you could do. You want to go from $100,000 to $1 million in revenue in 3 years. You're going to 10x where you're at. Well, what things would need to change? And this is where the beauty of this exercise comes in to being used to do planning and really think through things differently. What type of systems do you not have in place? What type of leadership skills do you not have just yet? What type of team would you need? What type of space? What type of tech stack? What type of actual opportunities would you need to be a part of? Would there need to be a partner involved? Would there need to be financing? Would there need to be all kinds of things, right? Hiring and recruiting. Where does that come from? Do you not have these things set in place? Awesome. Let's think through that, and let's think, is this really possible? How do we back into these things? Because as we go through these exercises, it's really fascinating to see, oh, well, I guess it is possible, and I would need to do these things in order for that to actually, work out. Now, here's the benefit of this. If you set a goal to go from $100,000 to $250,000 in 3 years, and you hit it, that's awesome. If you set a goal to go from $100,000 to $1 million in 3 years and you only get to 700,000, you didn't hit it. But you're almost 3 times as big as the other goal that you set, even though you failed at 10xing where you're at. This is the power of goal setting for anything, actually. And we have to be able to make incremental progress along the way, but setting these big goals, I think is important. It gives us something to work towards. It gives us something to motivate us. My son recently told me he wanted to play in the NBA. And I work with plenty of athletes, and I've worked with plenty of professional athletes as a physical therapist, and I can tell you it's very low likelihood. It's a very challenging thing to do, to play professionally in anything, and but it's a North Star goal for him. So what does that mean? That means he's out in the driveway practicing every single day to improve his jump shot so that he can, make the middle school basketball team. And then from there, even more work's going to have to go in for him to make his high school basketball team, and then for him to play in college, and then for him to then, potentially play professionally. And all of these things, let's just say he misses it and he just gets to play at like a Division II, college, like where I played baseball at a small school. And that's still pretty awesome. That's still a great accomplishment. That's something you can be really proud of. So maybe you didn't make it to the pros, but man, you played collegiately. Versus if he just said, you know what, my goal is I just want to make my middle school basketball team. That's the goal that he set. A very achievable goal, much more achievable than playing in the NBA. Well, cool. You hit that goal and you achieved it and you feel good about ourselves, but it didn't really stretch us more. It didn't really make us try harder. It didn't really make us expand what we think is possible or what we would need to do to get that outcome. And I think one of the things that is really challenging with business owners is that we think too small because we want that win. We're usually like pretty competitive, and we want to actually be able to check a box and say, oh, I said I was going to do this. Guess what? I did it. Versus if you set something that's a huge, lofty goal and you don't do it, but you get way closer than you would have if you set this really, really achievable small goal, you're still in net a better place in a lot of ways, assuming that aligns with what you want to do. This is really important because your goals and my goals and other people's goals, they're going to be very different. And your goal really needs to align with what you want your life to look like, right? That's number one. But let's just say that we're the same in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. If I set a big goal and I really expand what I think is possible, and I fall a little bit short, and you set a very, very conservative goal, I still end up in a better place. I still end up having developed more skills or challenged myself more or progressed more in a certain area to get there. That's going to help me in many other ways in my life. So I challenge you, as you're thinking about what your goals are for your business, or your kids thinking about what they want to do, or you as a person with your health or your relationships or whatever, think about a 10x difference versus a 2x difference. And what do you need to do in order to get there? Because even if it's not achievable, you're better off striving for something like that than you are to try to conservatively hit a goal, achieve something, to be able to check that little box on your notebook and make sure that you feel accomplished for doing so. That is not going to get you as far as really stretching what you think is possible and really trying to work hard towards that goal. Thanks as always for listening and watching. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, this is something we've been putting a lot of effort into. If you want to see what I actually look like, you want to see how much I use my fucking hands when I'm talking, go to YouTube. You can see it there. We'd love for you to get a chance to leave a comment and enjoy, being a part of a conversation versus just listening to a one-way channel. So as always, thanks for watching and listening. Catch you on the next one.